Ollie, very good morning to you. Well, October seems far than what people had hoped to be. That's about 6 months from now. What's driving this message? What's behind this message by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer?
Well, we've been having lots of questions like this thrown at politicians, the Prime Minister, other senior ministers as well, for days now, with many people in Britain trying to work out the timeline, the expected timeline for the lockdown measures that are in place and the prospect of the UK economy at some point reopening again in some form. And I think we got from Jenny Harries the clearest explanation yet of exactly how all this might work. It's pretty nuanced, so let me take you through what she is saying. She's saying that we won't know whether the measures that are in place in the UK are having any effect on the trajectory of the COVID-19 outbreak here for a couple of weeks. She then says you won't get a full sense of the impact that's been made on the peak of the outbreak for 2 or 3 months. So she's saying that over that period that lockdown measures are clearly going to have to be in place, although reviewed every 3 weeks. Then she says even if you have flattened the peak of the outbreak, you can't simply immediately go back to normal, because she says, in her words, that would be quite dangerous. You would see a potential second peak, the second spike in COVID-19 infections. So she is saying that that is going to have to be kept under review, how long you keep lockdown measures in place for. And she said it could be 3 to 6 months or plausibly longer than that. Now, crucially, she's not saying that Britain is definitely going to be in complete lockdown in the same way that it is now throughout that six-month period, but what she is saying is you might see gradual unwinding of the lockdown possible after you get past that 2 to 3 month period, when you get a sense of how the outbreak is moving. So that could mean that some people are allowed to go back into the economy if they've been tested for COVID-19, for example. Some sectors might be able to open up if it's considered that they can work more safely than others, perhaps looking at individual items like school closures, whatever it might be. That piece-by-piece unwinding of the lockdown, rather than moving from lockdown immediately into the situation that we were all in before, when we had what you might describe as normal lives.
If you see what's been happening in China after 4 months, I mean, their first reported big numbers were in December. We're sitting in March, end of March, now it's like plus minus 4 months, and then their economy is beginning to work again. The factories are operating again. Is the UK expecting to make a decision at a particular point of this lockdown? Are they looking to where the infection rate will be at a particular point and then decide we can then release so many people into the economy?
That's right. So there's currently a 3-week lockdown in place, and at the end of that it'll be reviewed. I don't think anyone expects that those lockdown measures will suddenly be lifted at the end of the initial period of lockdown, and then it will be reviewed on an ongoing basis every 2 or 3 weeks. And the crucial point that Jenny Harries is saying here is getting a sense of what has happened to the peak of the outbreak. That is the entire strategy in the UK at the moment. Flatten that peak so that the National Health Service doesn't ever get completely overwhelmed by COVID-19 coronavirus cases. And once Britain gets a sense of whether it has achieved that, it's at that point it'll be able to start making decisions about how to unwind the lockdown and when. One other crucial element to all of this is this idea of an antibody test, which tells you who in the population has had COVID-19 coronavirus already. Reports in the British press this morning that the government believes it might be close to being able to get millions of those tests out into the UK population in the not too distant future. If it could do that, you could be looking at a situation, as is being reported in parts of Germany, where the Germans are considering testing people to make sure who has had coronavirus, and those people who have had it and may therefore have a level of immunity to it and therefore can't spread it, might be allowed back into the economy with certificates saying, look, I've had COVID-19 already, I'm safe to go back to work. That could be one way of gradually reopening the economy here and in other countries.
So it's going to be a gradual relaxation of lockdown measures and not just wait for 6 months, then we start there. Thank you very much for that explanation. That's Ollie Barrett, our correspondent in London.